basically today we're being asked the three options what to do. I'm not, like it's been well documented, I'm not in favor of moving forward with this at all. I truly believe this is one of the best city services that we provide. When you look at all the numbers, currently at $9.60, large, your regular sanitation pickup, large item, recycling, Christmas tree, all the things that are laid out in there. When you look at the other rates that are provided for cities of our size, basically I think we're going to go through a long, as we laid it out here, a long, painful exercise to find out that we provide an extremely good service at a good rate. And I just, when we constantly hear about the load of work at City Hall and trying to stay on top of things, I don't think we should waste any time trying to tinker with the service, which I truly believe is one of the best services that we provide. I've tried to stay as close to an accurate number as possible since our last work session that we talked about this, between phone calls and emails and just people stopping me at the grocery store. I've had, as accurately as I can get it to, 97 people that have reached out to me, and 2 have told me to move forward. The rest have said this is, keep it the way it is, and it's people from all walks of life, all political persuasions, and just think we have a great service, and that's something that we should be tinkering with. Over 15 years, the rate has increased 1%. I'm not sure that's something we could provide if it was a contract went to somebody else. One of the things that's come up with people giving me a call or talking to me and sending me emails is the hours in the hours that is in our collective bargaining agreement, and that's something I personally have no interest in addressing now. We have a collective bargaining agreement that we all approved, where we talked about the hours of the workers. If that's something that we really wanted to go up against, we should have done it then. And that's just my thought on that one. And when it comes down to it, there's also the human element. We have 12 people that have combined decades of experience doing this, and they're experts at it, and they do a tremendously good job. And I know there's the argument of trying to save the taxpayers money here, but the way I look at it is there's no way we're going to be able to write in here, say if a private contractor gets it, 12 people are laid off, this is all hypothetical, that they're guaranteed a job. Obviously, to say that private hauler would get the contract, they'd probably be looking for someone that has that experience, but there's no way that we can guarantee that. When we talk about cost savings, hypothetically, we could be looking at people going on unemployment. So when we're talking about cost savings, to me, it's looking at it, you have quilts, we're cutting off 3 feet of it as a savings, but then we're stitching it back on the other side. Where it might be a city tax savings, but in the grand scheme of things, not a savings in my mind. So I don't think any of those comments come as a surprise to anyone, but just want to get that out there and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Steve. Ms. Lee?
I have a couple questions before any comments, I guess. I just want to, the way I read this, I want to see if my understanding is correct on a couple of things. $960 for the next year, right? It was 9, it's gone up to $960. That $960, does it, or it does not include, trying to find my list of what it includes here. What comes out of the sanitation, $960 per month? Our truck cost, replacement cost, upkeep, does that come out of, does that $960 cover that?
Yes.
But we buy trucks through the CIP process?
Right, but utilizing the funds from the sanitation fund.
All right, so the $960 does cover, that was one of my biggest questions. And since that's the answer, I think I'm agreeing with Councilman Kuhn here. I'm not sure if we need to go forward with this. From my understanding, if somebody can beat us that bad, if somebody could come in at $5 or $6 per house, I'm not sure if it's worth it. You look at the other towns here, only one would beat the $960, if I remember right, in Kanawha or whatever it was. But, am I correct in remembering that? Kensett or whatever it was. So only one of them all in such a small town, that's not even to be really a true measure. So you gotta weigh the pros and the cons here, and I'm just not, I don't really see it moving forward. I'm all for, unlike Mr. Kuhn, I mean, I think the last 6 months has been a good process. Okay, looking into it, seeing, I've learned a lot. I learned more about sanitation than I probably ever thought possible. I do think there's room to improve. I think there's savings costs. I think in January, February, we put out the goals, and when it went up as a goal, it wasn't, you know, someone put it up there. To me, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, let's look into it. I think we've maybe have done that a little bit, but, you know, I have received a lot of them, not 90-some, like you, Mr. Keelan. But I would say 20-some, probably, I suppose, you multiply them like 20 times 4, maybe it's there. It's amazing, I've had phone calls on people just saying, I would never call you on this, but since you're looking into it, someone broke a glass jar in my driveway today, it wasn't picked up other than the big pieces. All right, thanks. I didn't call you Bill on that one, I figured. But, I mean, but that's not this issue. That's a service issue, and overall, I think the service has been very, very good. I think it came down to January, February, somebody, you know, them working 6 hours, getting paid for 10. If that's the issue, that's for collective bargaining, like Mr. Kuhn said, that's something we can address. You know, I had the hourly wages looked at. It's here somewhere, you know, it's public record, I think, I'm not gonna read all names and hourly wages. But if you work at if you get paid $20 an hour, it's $200 a day. You divide that by 6 hours, and you're making $33.33. That's a very good working wage. If that's the issue here, let's drop this and deal with that, because that's two different issues to me. If we're looking at the service, this is it. We have no problem with service in this town, so I'm for dropping it also.
Fair enough. Ms. Briggs?
Well, I guess from my perspective, I think it never hurts as a council or as a staff to take a good look at the city operations and make sure that they are the best that they can be for our citizens, saving money and providing the service that needs to be there. That's why when we first started talking about this, I didn't think it was a bad idea to do that. I don't think we should move forward to the second and third alternative, which is into the informal bidding and even the formal bidding. I think our best bet at this point is to ask our staff and the gentlemen that do the work is to take a good hard look at what's happening, how it's being presented, how we're working for the service and for the money that we're doing it for. I think that's what our job would be, is to ask them to do that. And that's why, that would be my suggestion, to do that, the first alternative, providing time for the staff to improve, the city staff to improve their operation and reduce the costs.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Crumpler?
Well, I won't lose a wink of sleep if we stop the process now. I think, like has been expressed, we've done some good homework. If we were to move ahead, I would not support a formal procedure at this point. I would only support an informal procedure. And if we were to consider an informal procedure, I would want it measured up against the current rate status quo. I don't think we're at a point that justifies staff or the city department expending a great deal of effort trying to put together a competitive proposal. I think first we'd want to test the water and see if there's a competitive marketplace that would warrant that kind of an effort through a formal process. So I could support an informal process. I could also support calling it good at this point. I would not be interested in revisiting hours of work. I have no problems with the level of service. I've said that repeatedly. The hours of work we addressed with the collective bargaining agreement, which we just put in place, was a non-issue to me then. I don't recall anybody bringing it up as an issue when we actually dealt with the collective bargaining agreement. And to me, it's a non-issue at least until the next collective bargaining cycle, which is 3 years away. So that's where I'm at.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Crumpler. Mr. Hickey?
I don't know, I've read through the packet. I'm not very, I guess, satisfied with what's been brought to us. talking to some of the workers, citizens, and even some of the things I kind of requested, to me, I think a lot of this just doesn't apply. I think we've kind of done a disservice to our sanitation department and our council, because to me, it looks like we just took 53 pages out of the San Diego, whatever they did, and we just threw it in there, copied it, threw it in there. The numbers, what other cities do, really doesn't apply to what we do. What Waste Management does in Green, Clarksville, Kansas, Canal, it's not Mason City. You have so many different factors, and if you're not comparing apples to apples, you're comparing apples to oranges. Them numbers don't mean anything to me. You're talking different landfills that have different tipping fees, miles of travel. You can't compare Woden or Crystal Lake to what Mason City service would be and the cost that they're gonna have. So a lot of this, I'm not very happy with. I don't think we focused our attention to where it needed to be focused. And I kind of agree with Councilman Tornquist. I think hours of service, again, they negotiate in good faith. We can't bring that up. We don't want to even talk about that. That's been already approved. They got a 4-year contract. I think if we're gonna do something, we go to a low-level service, kind of what you were talking, and then before we move forward, if not, it's done. I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it either, so. I don't understand that.
Thanks, Mr. Hickey. Anybody else? Anybody with response?
Well, I guess as far as the process that we use to analyze, when you're looking at an RFP, you're looking at any type of comparison of our service. Councilman Hickey's right, you can't compare this small town to us. But when you're trying to do a comparison and trying to determine what type of service we provide, what our costs are, what others do is all you have to build on. And so, yes, they're not apples to apples, I agree. But we also try to make sure that we're staying within the right levels for our water, our sewer rates, our sanitation rates. We're trying to make sure that we're not charging the average citizen, and if we are greater than what other communities are, we try to figure out why. I think that, yes, there's a lot in there about San Diego, but San Diego is one of the paramount organizations that does manage competition. And so when I looked at the different possibilities, that was to me the best opportunity that I had to look at an option. So maybe it was more than we needed to produce, maybe we're doing greater, but that was where I felt we needed to go. And if it was not appropriate, so be it, I just felt it was. We got, I think, some issues that we can continue to work with the excellence that we need to produce for our service. I've already been working with Perry. We're working on trying to figure out what types of procedures we're going to test and put through a system to analyze the best way to do business. And it might be that one of those items is sanitation and how we do our business in sanitation. We have a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of issues that even I know of that need to be evaluated in that way to determine whether or not process excellence could create a savings for us and ways we can work with that. So that definitely is our charge, and we're working forward to get that done. We're going to have at least a couple of events before the end of the year to study how we're doing things. And sanitation may be one of those departments that's big for determining that. We may find there's a better way to do it.
Anybody else?
So, Ms. Brenes.
Well, I really don't think it would hurt us at all to spend some city staff time on looking to improve the operations and looking at the costs. I mean, that's basically what you say your first alternative is here. And if that's what you were talking about.
Well, and that's something that we do, sorry to interrupt, and that's something we do all the time. Bill is continuing to look, and Scott, and I think even some of the city staff members, they're always looking at ways. Now, to formalize that may be what our bigger challenge is. We need to maybe formalize that process, like you're saying, to sit down and really analyze what we're doing. Maybe that's what Councilman Hickey was referring to also, but it is something that we're always doing.
Well, sometimes when you make it a formal situation where you pull in staff and they all sit down together and say, okay, what do you think would work best in this particular scenario? Or how can we improve this particular operation? when it's a little more formalized rather than just, you know, asking everybody for their opinion, which a lot of times that doesn't always work.
Sure.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all as far as moving our service, improving our service to the citizens, and looking for ways to reduce some of the costs. So that's why I'm thinking that this first step is what you're talking about, is kind of just investing staff time and staff meeting everybody that's working in sanitation to improving the whole scenario.
Well, and the biggest thing that will do is if we create efficiencies there, we're then able to make sure that we don't have to do a rate increase the next time that we would maybe otherwise think about doing a rate increase. That we can hold the line or even reduce what we're charging based off of the efficiencies that we create.
And
That's what I think you're referring to.
Exactly, exactly.
Mr. Turnquist?
Councilman Kuhn brought up a good point with concerns with staff time and priorities. Were we to pursue an informal process, how much staff time would be required? And basically what I mean by informal process is simply create an opportunity for any private service providers to offer basically what they would anticipate charging on a per household basis for a level of service that meets or exceeds the level of service that we have right now.
Well, I think based on the information that we've already pulled together, I would say 2 to 4 hours of getting Scott and basically the rest of the staff together to sit down and actually formalize, write up an RFP in the format that we currently use. We would probably have the RFP done, in half a day. It wouldn't take that much for us to do an RFP, because the information that we gathered here is a lot of the information that would go in the RFP. So it wouldn't take much time to formalize that, and then to send it out and receive it back and evaluate, maybe another 2 to 4 hours of staff time to evaluate each of the responses to make sure that they meet the guidelines that we've established, and then rank them and present them for council consideration. It wouldn't take a lot of staff time. I mean, we've done a lot of the work already that relates to developing an RFP.
Let's think about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. Ms. Solberg?
This goes back a few years, but I recall numerous times where folks would bring their garbage cans to city council meetings and they were destroyed. And when I first got on council, I got a lot of phone calls. Hey, my garbage can got wrecked, it got run over, whatever happened. I haven't had those phone calls as of late, so something is happening, or I'm hoping that something has improved there as far as the service to our citizens. And now, just this year, we have a lead person who is also on city council in his community. And I think that he would be willing to listen to ideas to improve this service if we need to improve it, as he has to listen to his constituents in his community as well. So I think we have good opportunities here. I think we're going in the right direction, but if there's some way that we can always improve, I guess everybody should be open to listen to that, or I'm hopeful that everybody would be open to listen to it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Lee?
I guess I'm even opposed to the informal process as of now. I haven't heard anything that really shows me that this is warranted. But going back to one thing I would say, because one thing I've heard a lot of people say is, it's been done like this for 30 or 40 years. Well, to justify what's best by tradition is a good way to do it. Justifying tradition by what is best is great. As the history teacher tells me, we should all be under the monarchy still, because it's always been done that way. That's the history lesson. So, we gotta judge what's best for Mason City, but not by tradition, but by what's best for us. And right now, I think we do have a great service, and truthfully, back in January, February, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know. I know I paid my $9 a month, and my garbage got picked up once a week, but was there a cheaper and better way out there to do it? I didn't know. I had never done that before, and after this process, I've kind of realized I doubt it. But within Mason City, we can always do something more efficient and cheaper. So within this council, within the staff, I think we can find ways to to find it cheaper, but I don't think we need somebody outside to do it for us or to pressure us to do it. I think we can do it on our own. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? Mr. Hickey.
I guess my recollection of the discussions we had at first, this was about looking to provide, show the taxpayers that we're providing the best service for the best possible dollars. I think when we talk efficiencies, I think we're efficient. I think our sanitation department does it very efficiently. If they're able to do a job that they're gonna pay for in 10 hours, if they're doing 6, they're doing it very efficiently, and they're doing it very quickly. I have no doubt in that, to be honest with you. I think they're out there busting their hump and their tail, and they're getting it done, and they're getting out of their, on how their contract states they should do it. So just to check into inefficiencies and try and find ways, I don't know if they really are there, to be honest with you. And that's just me as an operator and what I do for a living. And again, going back to what was said, kind of what you brought up was, we brought this up as checking to make sure we're getting the best dollar, the best bang for the buck for the taxpayer for the dollar for service provided. Now, to say another service, outside service, couldn't do it cheaper, we don't know that. We don't know that until we explore that. So again, I would be open to what Councilman Tornquist said, and opening that up to a low-level RFP process, so to speak, and see what's out there, because we have no idea. If you wanna look at the sheets, you got, again, I don't wanna compare Kansas, and I don't wanna compare some of these other towns, but you got Forest City, who's doing it for $6.95 a month. And they do use the one in North Iowa landfill, and they got 30 miles of stem time, one way there and one way back. So, to be honest with you, I think there possibly could be some opportunity, but we don't know that until we explore it. And if we explore it and we find out that nobody can come back and beat what we do as a community, then we can honestly say we're providing the best service for the best dollar.
No, I remember that from your comments from even back in Olson, was wanting to make sure that we indeed are giving the best value for what we provide, and making sure that, and the reason that sanitation was chosen is that there are more private vendors that could potentially provide the service, and that's why it was the one that was mentioned. And it really wasn't mentioned from the standpoint of, well, there were other possibilities you could have done, but that's the easiest one in order to provide an RFP to, because there are proven vendors within our city that could have done it.
Mr. King.
I appreciate those comments, and the bang for the buck, I'm always cautious about that comment. When you think about it, like I laid out before, the extemporaneous effects it could have on 12 people and their families. You say a private hauler comes in and it's $9.40, I still think we lose long-term, dollar-wise, when you look at your taxes. So I personally I disagree with that a little. I used the quilt analogy before. I'll use another one. It's kind of like a politician cutting down a perfectly good oak tree so he can stand on the stump and give a speech about how he's for conservation. Just doesn't add up to me.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Mr.
That was probably
That was
one
a
of the
good
best
one.
quotes I've ever heard.
He told me he had a good one earlier today.
I think, you know, I have always tried, not always successfully, but I've always tried to make decisions that, or I've tried to put myself in a position to where when I make a decision, I never second guess myself. And I usually do that based on data rather than emotions. And I liked what you said, but if you really think about what you said about tradition, any decision at this point at time would be because of what we think or what our gut is telling us. And I tend a little bit more towards where Travis is, and let's give people a crack at it without investing a lot of staff time or any department time. And let's make a fact-based decision. if our gut's accurate, it's only gonna take 8 hours of staff time, what, another couple more weeks? And then we can put this,
I don't know how long it takes them to turn it around, but I mean, within a couple of weeks, maybe a week or so, we can put something like that.
we can put this to rest based on facts. And if we're wrong, we might have avoided making a pretty bad decision based on our gut.
The only thing I would caution is if one does the informal process, which I have no issue with, is we wouldn't wanna have a very aggressive, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 of the companies come in and one of them come in very aggressively and they clearly can't pick up by one. Or some of the other things that these gentlemen do very, very, very well. And next thing you know, they start another process and then all of a sudden we find out, oh, they don't pick it up till 5.
Right, and that's part of the service level, I mean, that's
So in other words, if
that
we do the
was part of
informal,
my
it has to
memo.
be, you know, dead on.
Well, that would
Well,
be part of the
I think you would
RFP.
agree.
You know, right, let's talk about that just a little bit if that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, right now, I think our trash is all picked up by 1 o'clock. To me, that's not real magical, but certainly 3 o'clock would be. And the reason 3 o'clock is magical to me is in the wintertime, it starts getting dark around 3:30. And I think we would want disposal trucks off the streets by dark when people are coming home from work and things like that. Kids getting
Kids
home from
out,
school,
kids out.
school buses, all that kind of stuff. So I don't care if we wanna leave at 1 o'clock, I don't care, 3 o'clock, I don't care. But I would certainly want it all done by dark, which is early in the wintertime. Also, you had information on here on the various services that we provide. And it seems to me that if we ever got to a point of making a change, and I think we're a long ways away from that yet, but if we did, I wouldn't be interested in maintaining services that would require us to keep the Packer trucks. What's the point? However, the services that we provide with end loaders and regular dump trucks, and there's a lot of services listed in here, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to keep. Like the large item pickup, we don't really use the Packer trucks for the large item pickup if I'm seeing things out the window right. It's dump trucks and end loaders. Things like that, because obviously we're gonna have that equipment no matter what happens. But again, if we can't quantify those scenarios to where we think we're gonna get a fair number and a fair comparison without a lot of staff time, then I'd rather not mess with it. If we think we can, sounds like we're pretty close, and I'd rather make an informed decision than a gut decision.
Fair enough. General head nods and to whether anybody's even interested in going and discussing an informal process. Jean?
Yeah, I agree with.
If we do an informal process, do you have standards that, are we going straight according to the standards that are here, or do you have different standards that you?
As far as levels of service, you're.
Yeah, I mean, currently we have things picked up by 1, and you guys have everything, misses grabbed by 3, you know, et cetera, leaves.
Well, I think that's one of the things, we're gonna verify all that information with, I've talked to them before, but we'll put it in a formal writing. Yeah, I think the only things that would be questionable would be some of the items that we do for the volunteer coordinator and some of those other miscellaneous things that we do, birthday pickups and so forth. We'd have to make decisions on whether or not that would be, okay. And I think, you know, some of that we can quantify and put in as expected levels of service for them. So I don't think it would be that hard to, you know, they could just, we could simply say they need to provide trucks on our birthday that can be utilized for us to throw garbage. You know, there's different spots where we make the pickups, they have to do them. And
Do we use Packers for the?
a lot of times. Yeah. I think that if you guys go out to different sites and where we pack it up on the street corner or the park or wherever, and they pull a packer up, throw it in, take it away. So,
Well, I don't think it would be quite fair to lower our standards of service just to get an RFP out there for others to.
That's my concern.
Yeah, I don't, what is given to us now for a very good price, we should expect that, in any of the RFPs or any proposals that we get from the private agencies.
Right, and the things that I could get from staff, what I could get an estimate on how much, say on Earth Day we haul away, which I could then get to in the RFP, we could put estimated, 10,000 pounds, which is our national what it is, but you don't put a number or estimated amount, estimated number of locations that would have to be picked up, et cetera, so they could quantify how many men, how many trucks they need to have on those days, so they can calculate that in, or make that determination that whatever it was, they weren't gonna charge additional, at least provide them information as to what, more detail what some of those items are. And I think that information exists, it's just not in here right now, but it
Does-
to get.
Go ahead, Mr. Cronquist.
Well, I guess just to put a stake in the ground, could we agree that anything we currently do with the Packer truck would need to be done by a third-party provider, the same way we do it right now?
Essentially identical service.
Yeah.
With
I
the
think it
same, with the
should.
same time
I think it
standards.
should be, I mean,
Yeah.
that's really
All right.
part of our value. I mean, part of our value for what we do is all those other little things.
Right.
In the process, it talks about, a third party would have to beat, because no one's gonna ship just to ship. But they'd have to be over 10% was what
Right.
you guys used, and then
Well-
talking about that number or not, I think that number, if we're gonna do this, has to be a pretty aggressive number. Does it make sense to establish that at this point in time?
I wouldn't.
Who establishes it?
Well, I think you establish it, I think each council member would need to think of what they think that number is. We would do the bid, and the bid would say, we have the right to reject the bid. Each council member would then be able to decide, if the bid came before us, whether or not they were comfortable with making a change based on the number we received. I think we lay a number out there, it's unfair.
No, then they shoot at it. That's
Right,
exactly right.
exactly.
And how
So-
does one ensure longevity?
We would
Which I think is the
establish-
concern of everyone here.
Well,
is that-
the way we would do that would be establish what the limits are relative to percentage of increase over a period of time, length of contract to be established. I think we'd want to be looking at maybe a 3-year contract with a 2-year option or something like that. And then set in it what the percentage of increase can be from year to year as a matter. And then that's something that is in the bid. And they
A 3-year contract does not seem like a very long contract for such a monumental shift. I don't know about you folks, but a 3-year contract seems completely infinitesimal compared to this.
Before we get
Go
to that, I
ahead,
just want to
Mr.
make one point. The thing I don't like about the informal process, go to page, I'm not sure page it is, I'll just read it. The bargaining law does not require the union to open their contract and participate in this process. If they do not want to work on a formal managed competition proposal, then their bid would be the status quo rate that we currently charge customers. In that case, an informal process would be used to develop the service specifications and request proposals for the private vendors. So basically, the private vendor would, they already know what the rate is.
Right, but that's where what the mayor is talking about as far as how much.
Well, then we could say,
Lower.
we want to put out there, it has to be 10% lower, they still know what that is.
That's what I'm talking about. is-
I still think that's an unfair thing.
But
We're not saying what that number is, but go ahead.
I don't think, unless I've miscommunicated my position, I don't think we're talking about making a decision to change based on the results of an informal process. I am intending an informal process to either justify staying exactly the way we are, or to justify a formal process.
I still respectfully disagree, but I understand what you're saying, Ines.
But we would be under no I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We would be under no obligation then when these RFPs come in from these other vendors to do anything.
Correct. 'Cause we'll
We
put
could
that
say,
in the language of
this
the
doesn't make
RFP.
any sense that you're coming in even at the same amount or just even a little bit less of what we already have. Why would we change?
Right, and we'd have a magnitude.
And we don't know even now if anybody's out there to submit something. They might look at it and say, there's no way we can do what
They do
the
for
city's
this.
already doing. Thank you for letting us do this, but thanks, but no thanks.
Correct.
Well, and I know we've got some service providers here and a whole lot of guys that work for the city now. For me, 10% is no deal.
Yeah.
It's gonna have to be really significant, so you guys are gonna have to decide whether you even wanna spend the time messing with an informal RFP. It's gonna have to be pretty significant to get my attention to even consider a formal process.
Correct. I agree with that. Contract length, even in an informal process, you were suggesting 3 years. I personally, my view is that it has to be significantly longer than that.
That's,
I like that a lot better, because they need to understand, it can't be just to come in and gouge thing, it has to be, I mean, that's just my view.
No,
You guys
I don't know.
are, I see tens across, and whether you're for the process or not, you can weigh in on whether it's be
I
10
thought we
or
didn't want to throw that number out.
10 years.
10 years.
Length of contract,
Yeah.
very different. Go ahead, Mr.
No, I'm still, not, even the informal, I'm not a big fan of moving forward. If it moves forward, if it's 4 people want to move forward, I get it. But it has to be exact service. There's no variation, there's no, hey, we can make it $5.60, but you got $1 a trash bag or a leaf bag. I don't want any of that, because then they're starting to play games with us. And I'm not, I'm not for this, but if someone came in, and I guess Ms. Torp was right, if someone came in magically and said, we can do this for $5 a month, which I can't believe. I guess in a way, we owe it to the taxpayers to look at that, but it's gonna have to be so drastic for me to give it a formal process, which takes me back to, you're right, you want numbers, makes you feel better, but my God, whatever you wanna call it, we're not gonna move forward on this, and we're wasting time. I just really think.
All right, so basically, 10 years is at least what I hear from folks, and I understand Mr. Kidd, Mr.
And a 1% increase, because that's what we've done for 15.
Yep. Yep.
And what?
We're talking about over the 15-year span.
Yep. I think it's ridiculous.
Just looking for head nods. Yes, sir.
On one.
On doing an informal process, apparently with a 10-year term required, and the level of service that is prepared right now, delivered right now. Shaky? Good. All right, you feel like you have direction?
Yes.
All right. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate you being here, and seeing no further business.
One follow-up question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When do you think you might be able to let us know, timetable?
That's a good question. Should be sooner rather than.
I'll get staff together and we'll develop a timetable.
A timetable that would show us the various steps and take us all the way through probably our next meeting to discuss this, which I would assume would not be until after you've got a recommendation resulting from the RFP, the informal RFP process.
Yes, it would be, yeah, the result would be, I'll back it up, do the timeline.
Okay.
The other, I'm looking at Mr. Stanger, with this process now, it looks like we are going to do this, the 5 people that we're waiting to hire, and how that can potentially affect our snow removal and everything that's laid out from here.
I think
Another downside.
We'll have this, no, we'll get this done. We know, and I'm getting plenty of pressure from that standpoint, so I know that I need to spend a lot of time right on this and get it done.
I mean, I would think this could be something that could be done easily within a month. Way.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident on this. A lot of it depends on how much time we feel is needed for the vendors to be able to produce their response back. And, I don't know what that is.
And all likely, you may even have vendors just say, no, we can't, so.
I got one.
Go ahead.
This question, and this doesn't, but just so the public knows, I've had questions, we haven't contacted any other.
Nope, haven't contacted. I have met with Absolute Waste and also with Waste Management about what we would be doing here, what the potential would be if it changed over, but no decisions, no talk of who would come in.
Well, I know there's been some rumor that.
Yeah, I mean, those individuals requested to meet with me, I met with them, but not for accomplishing any type of task, simply to open the conversation and understand what we were considering here. When it appeared on the as a council priority, we started having this discussion, they wanted to know what it entails, what the possibilities for them. So that's all that's been discussed.
Make sure, is there anybody else? All right. Seeing no no further business, we're adjourned.